Jimmy D and the Wolf Podcast. Welcome. We missed a couple weeks, I think. Hasn't it been?
That's on me. My apologies.
No, I think I was the cause for one of them.
Oh yeah,
I think I was in New York.
You're in New York the one week, and the other week I just literally didn't have enough fuel in the tank to do anything.
Sure. Yeah. We probably lost a lot of regular viewers. You get out of a routine, and you're like, and that's how it goes, But
Sure.
we'll have to get back into it. Kit Wakely was on our podcast. I think episode number 70, our best performing podcast by far. And I flew to New York to see him play at Carnegie Hall. And that was pretty amazing. Kit Wakely playing at Carnegie Hall, Sinners and Saints Symphony.
He's a brilliant guy.
Yes, he is. And the music, I should send you. I recorded the entire thing. If you're interested, I could send it to you. Is that against his trademark? If I don't publish it, I think it's okay.
Yeah,
it's trademark. If I published it, put it on, that would be a copyright.
Just don't record it on the VHS. That'll get you into tons of trouble.
The VHS? How come?
I don't know. You remember the old VCR?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
That had the little blue screen, and then it had the FBI warning beforehand. If you record this, you're gonna go to prison forever, and we're gonna $150,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so it's getting colder now in Nashville. It's over the weekend. It got really cold. How about up in Indiana?
Man, it dropped like 20 degrees the other day, overnight. It's way cooler all of a sudden, which personally, I love it, man. I love the cool weather.
I do too.
I thrive in it. I'm more comfortable. Everything's better for me, but most people hate it. I love this time of year in southern Indiana. It's we're a few weeks away from the best part when the leaves start to fall, and right before they fall, the colors here are just beautiful. It's a big reason that. One of the biggest reasons I stay here is fall in Madison, Indiana is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It really is.
Yeah, the change of the colors, it's like God is a master artist. And
100%.
Just you see that.
Yeah.
It's like to come up with that concept. And yeah, I'm going to give him a great, every fall, I'm going to give them a great natural artistic show.
God sure paints a pretty picture.
Sure does, yeah. So,
but yeah, I love this time of year, man. I'm a big football fan. Everything hits just about right this time of year.
So, how are your teams doing?
The Colts, Memphis, and I yesterday went up to the game, and they played great. It was a great game.
What? You were at the game?
Yeah.
You went to Indianapolis and watched the game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Memphis and I went yesterday.
Wow. Good for you, man.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
How good of seats did you have?
Well, it's funny because we were kind of in the nosebleed section a little bit, but both of us agreed, like the last few games we've been to, we had really good seats, but the players are so big that when you're that close, you almost can't even tell what's going on. It's just like this big melee of bodies, and you're going, "What? Did we get a first down? Was it good enough? Did he catch that pass, or where was the foul?" And we're in the nosebleeds, and Memphis immediately, once the game started, he was like, "I like these seats better than the ones that we usually get." And I was like, "You know what? I think I do too," because we could actually see everything that was happening. Like you could see the whole field, and they played great. I mean, they won. It was a blowout against the Texans, and T.Y. Hilton came back, and he's been injured, and he's one of our best players and a veteran. And I always root for him because he's not a very big dude. He's smaller than me, and he's playing in the NFL, and he's a Christian. Doesn't hurt, you know what I mean? And yeah. He came back yesterday and had a really warm welcome, and he played a great game. But yeah, we had a great time.
So what's the record of the Pacers?
Two
Colts.
2 wins, 4 losses. We've played some great teams so far. Uh, we could easily be 4-2. I think they're going to do well this season. I think they'll get into the playoffs easily.
That would be nice. Yeah.
Just had a rough start.
It's uh, I'm a Celtics fan, and there was a period of time I was going to games, and it seemed like if I went to the game, even though they were supposed to win, they would fall flat,
Right.
and I got really irritated at that. It was like, what the heck? I remember when they saw Atlanta played Atlanta. I took my buddy. We were like second row. I spent some bucks for the house, and mid court second row, and they played Atlanta. Atlanta was pretty good that year, and Atlanta beat them. I was so angry, and Schroeder, who now plays for the Celtics,
Yeah.
was a thorn in our side. Anyway, so it's just fun to go to a game if you love the sport and you love the team.
It is
When they win, it's just a bonus.
absolutely. It was a great day for he and I. 'Cause, with 3 kids, it's like I have to go the extra mile to make sure that I get one-on-one time with each kid. So we have like those special memories where it wasn't all of us; it was one-on-one. So it's
Yeah. That's
it
great that you take the
interesting
time
though,
to
because like usually if there's you know any kind of check or like metal detectors, or they randomly pick somebody, I'm the random guy every single time that they're like, I'm going to search every single thing that you have, or like the metal rod in my leg will sit off the metal detector. So I'm that dude every single time, which you witnessed in the airports in our travels. I'm that guy.
Hey, I forgot to ask you, and maybe I shouldn't do it on this podcast, but how did your appointment go with the podiatrist? Maybe
It
you can
went
tell me
great.
more detail later, but you're
It went great. Uh,
phenomenal.
I've had a heel injury. I broke my
You
hip
said 17 years?
17 years ago. And what's funny, another God thing, is sometimes you think, I'm praying for this. This is what I want. This is the best possible. And going into it, I was like praying that they were going to say, hey, we're going to break your heel. We're going to do surgery, and we're going to alleviate some of this pain for you. That's what I thought was the best option. But what he said was better than what I thought could possibly be. He said, this has completely run its course and it's never going to get worse. Which to me, I was like, great. I can deal with the way it's been. And I've always had this image in my mind for the last 17 years of like, this is going to get worse. And one day I'm going to be laid up and I won't even be able to get around. And that's not the case. He's like, no, this has run its course. This has gotten as bad as it's going to get. It's never going to get worse. We can give you some inserts and, help alleviate some pain. So it was better than what I thought the best case scenario could be.
That is awesome. Glad
Yeah.
to hear it, man.
Yeah.
All right. So today we tried to, rather than just gallivanting or back and forth on our conversation like we normally do, let's
Right.
get into something that is interesting and meaningful, perhaps, although for non-musicians they may not be so interesting. But I came across this article. This one, I mean, there's a lot of people that publish stuff on the internet and try to get followings, of course. This was a guy that apparently I subscribed to, Ted Giola, and he said 12 predictions for the future of music.
I'm
And
to hear this.
12 predictions. He says, let me peer into my crystal ball and predict the next decade in music. I mean, just think about where music has gone in 10 years. So we're in 2021, 2011. Was Spotify even a thing in 2011? Barely.
I didn't know about it.
Spotify was hardly even a thing, or streaming platforms, Apple Music, whatever your preference is. Pandora might have been a thing. They were one of the early ones. They had Pandora Radio. They're a minor player now. Spotify is by far the biggest. Apple's the second biggest, and then there are others trying to come up. YouTube has their own music streaming platform. not just videos, but music streaming. And they're a big player. You know, they got a lot of money. It's a Goliath. There's a bunch of Goliaths hitting each other, behemoths. Pandora was in financial trouble, but so 10 years ago, a lot of things changed, you know, and so this forecast is for 10 more years, and you know, as we were saying in a conversation earlier today, change is nothing except accelerating at a rapid pace, right? We both agree that so the change over the next 10 years most likely is going to be much bigger than the change over the last 10 years.
Sure.
Makes sense? Number one, this is his prediction. And record labels will gradually lose both the ability and the desire to develop new artists. There simply won't be enough profit in young talent to justify the large required investments. But the labels won't disappear. Instead, they will focus increasingly on their old catalog and archival materials.
I would submit that's already happened.
Yeah. It certainly has happened.
And they're not nurturing young talent. You have to go do it on your own now, and all that they do is give you more distribution.
Yeah, they want to see you succeeding on a social media platform or having followers or some sort of success before they're ever interested in you.
They're not,
for the most part,
anybody.
For the most part, there are still some folks that try. I mean, there are some folks that, but you generally have to go viral first, like Lil Nas X, who was sleeping on his sister's couch, Old Town Road, the song that came out a few years ago, Old Town Road. And it broke a record that has not been broken since. It's only 2 years ago, but 19 weeks at number one on the Hot 100. That's never been done since. That broke records. And that was, of course, Billy Ray Cyrus jumped on with him. But that was success completely without a record label. Not true. I think I lied. I think in the middle of that, he got a record label to help him. But he already was successful before the record label got on. I think when he got Billy Ray Cyrus on, the label was involved by that time, I believe. Yeah, so, and old catalog. I mean, I don't know how many times I run into a young millennial who's listening to classic rock and you know, or wearing a T-shirt or something that, you know, Queen or Beatles or Led Zeppelin or
Dark Side of the Moon is still
Pink Floyd. I mean, you see a 20-something person who's just into that big time. So the archival stuff from the quote-unquote golden age of music, 60s and 70s, is still very much in play. Well, look at Rumors. I mean, Fleetwood Mac, of course, that's from the 80s, early 80s, or I think that was released in 78. Rumors was released in 78. And, you know, they went back on the I think they made it to the top 10 of the Billboard 200 after an album that had been out for almost 40 years.
100%.
And that was based on a viral video of a guy on a skateboard going to work, and he streamed Dreams on TikTok, and it just exploded. I mean, he was lip syncing, he wasn't even singing, and all of a sudden Fleetwood Mac became the thing.
Well, and not just that, like when I meet younger musicians, younger guitar players, something that has really struck me, I meet these, 20-year-old guitar players or 21-year-old guitar players and start talking to them. I'm like, well, what are you into? What are you listening to? They're listening to the exact same stuff I was listening to 24, 25 years ago. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm listening to Hendrix and SRV and Zeppelin. And it's like, it's been that long and there's nothing new that everybody's really gravitating towards. They're literally listening to the same stuff.
So that's where streaming pays off. You have no additional cost. You own the rights, and there's streaming of these albums, and you're making money, and you have no cost. Because every time, that's where the benefit of streaming works. I mean, you buy an album, I don't care if you listen to it, CDs don't wear out. You can listen to it 1,000,000 times, and there's no additional revenue coming. Whereas, now they say it takes 1,500 plays to equal 1,200 to 1,500 plays. So that's a lot of plays. Is kind of the break even between the cost of the album and the streaming revenue. That's a lot of plays, but um, some of those records, I've streamed stuff more than 1,500 times, I'd say. Have you streamed? Have you listened to stuff? Have you listened to Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimi Hendrix more than 1,500
A
times?
million times, man. Yeah, absolutely.
So every time you stream it, they get paid. So that's where one thing where streaming comes in. Anyway, number 2, and this is already happening as well. This is not crystal ball. This is just looking at what's happening. More new artists will get their big break from web platforms. It's already happening. That's not predicting the future. That's stating what's happening. But it's interesting some of the platforms he names. TikTok, of course, YouTube, Peloton.
I don't know what that is.
Peloton is people buy I think it's usually a bike. It's a workout. It's a workout. I think it's a bike, or is it running also? I think it's always a bike. It's a stationary bike with a computer screen that has very highly involved programs, and they have music on there. And there was a big to-do about a year ago that they were using music without paying for the licensing of it, and now they've got a deal. They've made a deal with the majors as far as licensing the music. But music has a big part. When you're working out, you want, obviously it's not going to be ballads, right? It's going to be higher BPM stuff. But Bandcamp, I was surprised that you mentioned Bandcamp. He said, so anyway, we get their big break from web platforms other than record labels. That said, even these platforms are less than ideal ways to introduce new artists to curious listeners, so I wouldn't be surprised if a whole new platform emerges during the next decade, an interface that makes it fun and exciting for music fans to hear new music. The online process should be as enjoyable as going to clubs, but it's not even close currently. And he says that, strange to say, video games like Fortnite might end up doing a better job of this than music platforms. I know of a number of artists that have gone live on Fortnite and killed it. Your kids ever play Fortnite?
Oh, dude, they were obsessed with it there for a while.
Kind of out of flavor. They've gone.
Yeah, they're over it now. It's like old news. They don't play it anymore, but
it's still huge. I think it's still the number one game, and they have music on there, and they do the licensing and all that. I think Post Malone did a big one. There's a bunch of them have done private shows on Fortnite, and it's a big deal. The broke records, so many viewers, millions of viewers, stuff like that. Fortnite is not something to be joked about.
It's all integrating.
Yeah. Number 3, a particular phenomenon will emerge. Listeners will have favorite songs, but not know or care about the name of the artist. Quote, you got to hear this great song on my workout playlist. In an odd way, our discovery process will return to the medieval model, circa 1000 AD, when compositions could remain enormous popularity even as the people who created the music remained largely anonymous. Folk songs. I mean, there are a bunch of folk songs. Nobody knows who wrote them, right?
Well, absolutely, man. I mean, being a big blues fan, it's the same thing in the blues world, where I remember hearing, Zeppelin and thinking, how'd they come up with all this music? And, like, these guys invented this incredible style of music. And then digging in, and sometimes it would even be listed wrong. Like, who wrote this song? It would say McKinley Morganfield. Well, who's McKinley Morganfield? I find, well, that's Muddy Waters. And I read somewhere else, well, it wasn't Muddy Waters who wrote this song. It was this other guy. It was Skip James or whoever, for example.
Yeah, and you can't tell. A lot of them were hand down by tradition, and they didn't care about who wrote it. It was just a traditional folk song. I mean, have you ever opened up a songbook and where the place where you should have the composer, it says traditional folk song?
100%. And some of the most timeless songs ever, really, truly, nobody knows who wrote them, because it was before they were trying to monetize or even had a system to monetize.
Well, according to this prediction, that's coming back. But now, with it can be tracked. So now, you immediately upload a song to YouTube, especially an Eagles song. Those guys are pirates. They don't want you to cover an Eagles song. You upload something to an Eagles song, and before you even finish doing all your editing to everything you want, as far as you upload it and you put it on unlisted, and it takes you probably 15 minutes or so to get all the description right and the thumbnail and all that stuff. And by that time, it's already said there's a trademark, again, a copyright against this. and you can use it, but you can't monetize it because it's owned by someone else. So, now, even though it's my version, right, it's a cover, but they can identify that. So the technology is so strong today that anonymous writers can be identified. So I don't know that I agree with this specifically. I mean, they didn't have the technology to do that in 1000 AD, right?
Right.
We have the technology today. We have the technology.
We're going to find out who wrote it.
Absolutely. Number 4, this is not a good one. Musician incomes will continue to shrink, but some young musicians will still earn large sums of money. However, their big paydays will come more from branding, licensing, and ancillary deals than recording. Side deals will increasingly be seen as more desirable than record contracts. In other words, you become a musician in order to make money as a influencer. I was at the YouTube conference, Vid Summit, and you overhear guys saying, "Yeah, I started my second channel and it's only got 2 million subs so far, and I'm kind of disappointed." Like 2 million subscribers. If you have 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, you can make a living. But not most of it is not from the YouTube. They say if you're making 20% of your money from the YouTube payments, you're doing it wrong. You need to, because it's the influencer thing. If you have 300,000, one guy, the guy Roger Wakefield, who does plumbing videos, he's got 300 some thousand subscribers. He's got a team of 8 people working for him, and he can pay them from the revenue he gets. He's making plumbing videos. So, if you have 1 million subs, you're making a lot of money. If you got, like the big players like Mr. Beast has got 70 some million. PewDiePie has got more. Those guys are making 10 to 20 million a year, and it's all legit. It's not going away. So anyone who thinks that YouTube is not a good, but you just don't do it. You have to work hard. There were people who I've heard some presenters, they said they gave up everything. They just had Uber Eats. They didn't do anything but work on their YouTube for like a year, over 100 hours a week. Stop going to the gym, just focus. So it's not easy. I mean, it's not like, hey, I'm going to make videos and suddenly get famous.
Right.
You got to dial in. You got to figure out what works. And I know one of your sons has mentioned he wants to be a YouTube influencer. It's definitely doable, but it's a lot of work. Some luck.
Well, there's a good side to that, and there's a bad side to that. And the good side in my mind is I love people that work hard. I'm all about working hard. Go get it, go earn it. And so the fact that people can kind of knock down walls through personal effort, I'm a huge fan of that. That being said, becoming famous as a musician because you're an influencer has absolutely nothing to do with you being good.
True. Granted. Yeah.
So that's the flip side of like.
Yeah. It's about your story. It's about your branding. It's like we talked about the most famous, the best fingerstyle guitar player from Indiana, in the world, actually. I forgot his name. Okay. We're not going to go there. But there is a guy who's, he's got his branding down.
Yes.
He's got the branding down. The country blues, he's got it down, man. You can't take that away from him. What he wears, what he plays, what his wife plays, everything about it is branded just to the T.
100%.
He's got it down.
And people at that point, they don't know any better. You know what I mean? You say, "Oh, I'm the best at this," and they haven't heard the others that are above and beyond what you're doing. And of course,
So we don't name his name, but he's got his wife playing the washboard thing, and he's so people who know who I'm talking about now know who I'm talking about. But if you don't, you probably don't. So but he's got the branding down, succeeding, playing festivals, touring the world, just killing it, making a lot of money.
Right.
Okay, number 5, dead musicians. This one I don't like, and I did a video on this on my YouTube like 2 years ago. There was articles that came out, holograms. Number 5, dead musicians will start showing up everywhere. The holograms, biopics, deepfake vocals, and other technology-driven interfaces. These resurrected performers will capture an increasing share of industry revenues and put a squeeze on living artists. This will eventually happen with dead movie stars and other celebrities too, but deceased musicians will lead this trend because it's simpler and cheaper to fake an audio than, for example, a commercial film. I would never pay to go see a hologram of James Dio or James Brown or
I would.
Elvis.
A lot of people would, man.
I did a video on that. I was amazing, and I actually asked people if they would, and some of the comments said, "Yeah, I'd do that." I mean, what the heck, you know? And the technology then, when I did the video like 2 years ago, you literally had to have somebody acting in the pit, orchestra pit, doing the motions that you wanted to project it on the hologram. It was quite complicated. Machines were complex and heavy and took a lot of juice to do, but I think the technology's gotten easier to do it. You probably don't need someone actually literally acting out, but to make the body movements. But
well, and what's the? I mean, the sky's the limit with that whole thing. With AI, I mean, I can sit here and say I would never go see one of those shows, or I would never listen to. I mean, at what point do new compositions start coming out from deceased artists?
AI, I mean, AI is writing songs now. You know,
Exactly.
and they're saying it's going to share the charts with the real musicians and real songs.
They're not that far away, man. And at what point does that start happening? At what point do we start hearing great composers that have been dead forever start composing new music through AI? Because there have to be tendencies. It has to come down to math. If they say, well, okay, out of 100 times, this composer would play the 6th after he plays the 4th, well, the computer's going to figure that out ultimately. That's a whole nother can of worms, man.
Yeah. And following on number 5 is number 6. Dead musicians will start giving tours in concert halls, but at the cost of technology goes down, they'll be performing everywhere. Holograms of Elvis may make their debut at pricey Las Vegas casinos, but may soon show up at the neighborhood bar. James Brown will sing at the Apollo once more, but eventually take wedding receptions and bar mitzvahs. Number 7, exciting new music trends will continue to emerge, but increasingly they will arrive from outside the major Anglo-American urban centers that previously determined what songs should be heard. So previously it was always Los Angeles, New York, and London. And that's changing. We're already seeing it with K-pop.
Yep.
The Korean, the BTS, and other artists.
Yep.
Blackpink, what's the young Blackpink? Blackpink is a new artist. There's a bunch of Korean artists. We're already seeing the first signs of this with the global spread of K-pop and the vitality of the Eurovision competition. I keep hearing that more and more. Eurovision winner, Eurovision finalist. The Eurovision winner is, I used to poo-poo it because I thought it was music like ABBA, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's a comedy with Will Ferrell, like he won the Eurovision. It really makes fun of the contest. It's like, I don't know, but I was just doing a YouTube video I'm going to put out tomorrow morning and listing the candidates for Grammy Best New Artist, and there is an Italian rock band, sings in Italian, I believe Italian. They won Eurovision 2021, and they're listed as a potential for Best New Artist. I've never heard of them. And so, this Eurovision contest winners or finalists is having more and more weight. So get ready for A-pop from Africa.
Well,
Africa is going to explode.
That's what I was going to say, man, because
that's the mother lode. That's where it all came from.
Exactly. There's so much American music and music all over the world that is just so deeply entrenched in African music. And we know that the population is going to explode in Africa. They're right on the wall with that thing, man.
Nigeria is going to be the biggest, most highly populated country in the world in by 2100 anyway.
Something cool is going to happen musically.
I-pop from India or Indonesia. Which one gets to claim it? India or Indonesia? And a whole host of competing sounds and styles from Latin America, China, Eastern Europe, etc. So that'll be interesting, and then that's a positive one. That'll be fun. I mean, all that great music, remember when Paul Simon went over to Africa and did that whole album?
Graceland.
And Graceland was phenomenal. It was amazing stuff, from the 80s. More of that, please.
Sure. And that's the new stuff, man. It's where you go, all inventions at this point, we've seen it all, we've done it all. There's not going to be anything brand spanking new. It's just going to be taking two things that are proven and tried and true, and you put them together and go, well, nobody ever
Right.
put
Well,
those.
that's all innovation ever usually is, taking things and putting them together in unique ways.
Yeah.
So number 8. Meanwhile, in the United States and the rest of the English-speaking world, the biggest deals in music will be acquisition of old songs, especially goes back to, I think, one of the earlier ones, especially publishing rights. The legacy cash flows enjoyed by publishers will make this last safe haven in the music business. And so many artists have sold their songwriting. I mean, Bob Dylan famously sold his catalog for, I think it was over 300 million. I mean, everybody's selling their catalog. There's so many, even let's see, who's is it One Direction, the band from like the aughts that did really well, and who's I can't think of his name right now, but the producer that wrote all that stuff, he was really hot, and he sold his stuff. And Imagine Dragons sold all their catalog. I mean, they're young,
Still going.
they're still going, and they sold their catalog, cashed in, still putting out albums. I think Maroon 5 sold, Adam Levine, they sold some of their stuff, so Ryan Tedder, that's what I was trying to think of. Ryan Tedder, the producer, was it One Direction? What was his band? One Direction?
I don't know.
He was the hot producer in the aughts. He had his fingers into writing and producing all the big names. It's probably not One Direction. I can't remember the name of his band. He sold his catalog. So selling existing catalog is something that's already happening, and it's and outside there's a bunch of venture capitalists that are getting into that. I mean, it's a lot of money's coming from outside the music industry, and the music industry can't compete, so a lot of them are selling actually. Here's a kind of depressing one. The official industry figures will show that the music business is growing, but these numbers will be highly misleading. A huge portion of music profits will actually go to tech companies, Apple, Google, who have no interest in reinvesting this cash into the music ecosystem. For example, Spotify will take the cash flow generated by music and use it to acquire the rights to podcasts. They're already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They're buying podcasts because they don't have to pay royalties. They love podcasts because they don't have to pay any music royalties by law to podcasts. And that's all cash then, all profit. And in general, the music culture will be starved of funds because it must now pay the bills for other businesses. The crystal ball tells me that Spotify's biggest dream is getting into video and competing with Netflix and YouTube. I've seen evidence of that. They want to get into video. They don't have the billions of dollars. I mean, Google and Netflix, they can't compete with YouTube. I don't see how that's going to. So that could be a fool's errand. That could be an ego, by a CEO ego thing, Daniel Ek. But the huge behemoths are going to fight each other on stuff like that. But the end result is they're saying that there won't be much money for musicians and artists. That's kind of a negative term, a negative thought, negative analysis. I don't know. Number 10, all the innovations in music tech will come from outside of the legacy music industry, so major decisions about distribution, publicity, curation, presentation will be determined by Silicon Valley and its offshoots. These huge global corporations, literally the biggest businesses in the history of the world, are unlikely to be motivated by artistic or philanthropic aspirations in their initiatives. I don't know if I would agree with that. I mean, YouTube, like I said, I went to the YouTube, it was Vid Summit, YouTube deal. And the guy came from YouTube and spoke. And they they say, you guys are creatives. We want to keep you happy. And they're not music creators, but, a subset of that would be the music aspect of it. And they're very much concerned about and very friendly towards the creators, because that's what creates if they don't have the creators, they don't have anything to sell, and nobody's going to view anything. So I don't know that I agree with this quite negative viewpoint.
I don't think I do either, because I think they're underestimating the human element of creative people having lots of respect and appreciate other creative people. These people
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley are not, they're not dummies. They're incredibly creative people. They're going to, you know, adhere to other creatives,
I
I
think
believe.
so. He does say, though, they could have a major positive impact on the culture if they wanted to, given the enormous resources at their disposal. However, the musical tastes of the CEOs of Apple, Google, etc., may end up having a surprisingly large impact on how things play out. Okay, that's probably true. I mean, if they decide to value and nurture creatives, not just musicians and artists, but people who create the stuff, yeah, and they start sending money that way, more money,
They become the labels of old.
yeah, it could easily happen. The money's there.
The labels always shifted what people hear, you know, who they believe in and what they like, their own personal taste. Maybe Silicon Valley becomes that.
Number 11, two left. Back kind of counterpoint to what you were just saying. Record labels will increasingly pursue a bare bones, low investment approach. A few execs will be able to maintain lavish lifestyles even in a declining industry, but there won't be much cash for those at lower levels in their organization. Most people working in the music business will be poorly paid with few opportunities for advancement. New openings at the top will typically go to family members and close friends of the old school bosses, making nepotism the one record business tradition that will survive no matter what. That's a pretty negative viewpoint.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many indie labels that are crushing it too.
Yeah, yeah, and they
And this
value the
is
artist.
from the
Yeah,
perspective of like there's still just two or three big labels.
yeah. So finally, the greatest dream of the music execs will be to get out of the music business. They will try to sell NFTs or promote audiobooks or finance biopics or sell music themed apparel or open music themed casinos, etc., etc. Who can blame them? After collapsing the economics of the record business, they clearly need a new field to destroy. Well, this guy's a pessimist, and I'm going to actually, it just occurred to me now, the trends over the past 3 to 5 years, I don't know how far back, the record labels are reporting record profits, record revenues, record profits. And was that going to drastically reverse, Mr. Ted
Well,
Gioia? Is
it's
that going to reverse in the next 10 years? Just suddenly reverse course? The record, I mean, they're fat now. Being a record executive, they're making more money than I've ever had. Their profits are record,
and
and they're growing at double-digit growth. Sorry, go ahead.
it's one of the only things that's immune to everything else involving the economy.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter what the housing market does. It doesn't
yeah,
matter what I saw that when the housing market crashed, I was working more than ever. It was insane. I was turning work down, and it made no sense to me. But you know, people at a certain point, they're going to buy things that make them feel good, and they're going to buy things that you know are kind of good for their spirit if times are hard. And maybe that explosion has happened because of COVID. I don't know.
well, that's another story. I mean, many businesses, the world economy has exploded, and one of the reasons we have such inflation and such, I read, I was reading an article today, and I might have printed it off, but it could have been another topic of how the world purchasing power and profit and money in the pocket that people have surprisingly is higher than ever in spite of COVID. It's and not just, and they'd break it out by the top 20% and down to the low. Now the top 20% have a higher percentage increase of disposable income than they had before the last 3 or 4 years, but even the lower levels all have more money, and because of the shortage of labor, this is an economic discussion now, general economic discussion, but the shortage of labor, for the first time in a long time, probably a generation, average wages is actually going up because of the shortage of labor, and companies are having to raise rates, and it's actually, the economy is just screaming along, And, it's really hard to get a measure on it because we had a disastrous quarter. Our last year was a disastrous because of COVID, and we actually had negative growth last year, but we're coming out of it. And the world economy is pretty doggone humming along, pretty substantial right now. So
it it blows my mind that, I mean, even through COVID, like especially with the construction business, like we never slowed down, and everybody seems to have money to do repairs. Everybody seems to have money to do renovations, which is great. I'm happy for them, but sometimes I'm like, when somebody that works at McDonald's is like, I want to do this $30,000 kitchen renovation, it's like, how are you doing that? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, great, yeah. It seems like everybody has more money.
I I don't know if I should. I wish I had that in front of me right now. That with the graphs, I tried to print it off, but maybe that'll be another time. But yeah, it was fascinating that people are not suffering on average. On average, people just have more money,
Yeah,
and we can see it anecdotal evidence, like you just gave the anecdotal evidence.
it's
And
the opposite of where I thought we would be right now.
so
When COVID first started and everything was so terrifying, we're exactly on the other end of the spectrum from where I thought we would.
So, not to get political, but we're not that far away. We're a year away from the midterms, and then of course that'll be the precursor to what happens in 2024.
Yeah.
And usually, like Bill Clinton's campaign made the statement, became part of folklore. They had on the wall of their campaign, "It's the economy, stupid." And if you're the incumbent, now there's some disapproval issues with the current. He's below 50% right now. Biden is, and I think there's a higher disapproval than there is approval. So who knows? But it's going to be awfully hard for the Democrats to hang on to certainly the House and probably even the Senate, because that's normally what happens in a midterms. Normally what happens. But if everybody's doing better economically, they tend to vote for the person that was in office when that happened. That's historic, not
Sure.
left, right, whichever. I mean, people vote based on how well they personally are doing, and if everybody's doing that much better, it might be in the advantage of the Democrats. I don't want to get into right versus left discussion. I'm just looking at the historical trends of what has happened in the past. And whether you're, right wing, left wing, whatever, just looking at the.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a primal thing that kicks in at some point. It's like, if you're okay, just vote for remaining to be okay instead of, no matter what your political leanings are.
But 2022 will be quite interesting because there's a lot of dynamics going on, and
Yes.
if some people have an opinion, it's incredibly hard, strong opinion, I should say, probably more than in my lifetime. Everybody's got strong opinions one way or the other.
For sure.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And the money that's flowing into the record amounts of money is flowing. And there's another thing. People have money to donate to campaigns. Both parties, read this article the other day, both parties are raising by far more than has ever been raised for a midterm election. The amount of money flowing into the coffers of both sides for people running on the Democratic ticket and the Republican ticket for national elections, so House of Representatives and Senate, if they're up for re-election, it's record amounts of money. It's dwarfed at 2020. The last midterm was 2018. I think they were even saying it was more than even 2020, which is odd to believe because this is a midterm. Usually people vote more or donate more at the presidential cycle elections. But I'm pretty sure it was saying they're raising even more than was raised in 2020 for these races. And so if you're in a purple state, God help you. what you're going to have to listen to. All of the advertising you're going to have to go through. Thank God I live in Tennessee. It's pretty much a red state. So
Yeah,
I
they're
don't
gonna
think there's
beat you to death.
I don't think there's going to be too much of that overflow. I don't watch TV anyway, so
Yeah,
I'll be immune to it unless they start advertising on Netflix or Amazon, which there are no advertisements, so I won't be exposed to that. But
yeah,
if you're in I don't know, Georgia, I suppose, or Florida, or the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, those states that are Arizona, possibly. God help you.
yeah. They're gonna beat those poor people to
They're
death.
going to beat them to death with messaging,
Yeah,
mass media messaging.
yeah. The
So
Democratic candidate eats babies. Well, the Republican candidate eats multiple babies. It's gonna be horrible. I don't even want to know, dude.
So you in Indiana's pretty red, so you probably won't be
Yeah,
exposed to any of that.
they don't care.
Really.
They got this. This will be the last state they'll worry about.
They'd be wasting their money spending money. The Democrats would be wasting their money spending it in Indiana.
They know they're not going to win Indiana.
And pretty much Tennessee as well. I mean, the
Yeah.
Democrats would be wasting their money spending money.
100%.
So we're both pretty fortunate.
Right, exactly. We just have to listen to all the Republicans.
All right, buddy. As always,
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah,
Hope
it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, anybody, our listeners and watchers, we hope that you enjoyed our discussion. And if you have any suggestions for future guests or future topics, please let us know.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Jimmy D and the Wolf. See you next time.